Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. This time out, we are joined by Dan Boul, president and founder of 65 Amps.
Hey, Mitch. Thanks for having me here
You
today.
bet. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. You were doing a demonstration for the sales engineers.
Yeah, we had a blast in this amazing room.
Yeah, fun to play in, isn't it?
It's kind of scary how good it is. Yeah.
You can
Very
change
nice.
the acoustics in here from like a club to a
Yeah.
a big auditorium. Or
They showed me that. It was astonishing.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah.
cool to play guitar in the
Yeah.
in the Grand Canyon.
Right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here. It's very fun.
Absolutely, the amps are great. We want to talk about
Thank you.
all those. But tell us how you got started. How did you found 65 Amps?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. My business partner, Peter, who's my best friend, and you might know him as Sheryl Crow's musical director.
Sure.
About a decade ago, Cheryl's set was getting pretty long, and they wanted to drop stage volume so she could, not have to yell over a 100-watt Marshall anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of looked around at a bunch of different amps, and Peter and I have been amp nerds together since the 80s. And out of frustration, we just kind of built an amp.
Mm-hmm.
It was our first amp, which was the London. And never intending on going into business.
Right.
But we wanted to make sure the amp was absolutely bulletproof because it was kind of a risk for him to bring in this unknown thing
Sure.
to a world tour like that. So we made it, really well, and Cheryl loved it, said, I want one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guitar player, Tim Smith, said, I'll have one of those too. And then, okay, we're making a few amps.
Right.
And they went out on tour that year, and I started getting calls. I had a straight job, like short hair and shaved and all that stuff.
Right.
And I started getting calls at my desk from guys I've admired my whole life saying, I just went to a Sheryl Crow show, and I talked to Peter, and he said you'd make me one of those amps.
Right.
Oh, gosh. And so it was like Peter Frampton and Joe Walsh and Steve Miller and these guys. It was quite an honor.
Nice.
And one thing led to another. They were out on tour for about 8 weeks, and I had 25 orders. So at a certain point, we decided, let's give it a shot.
Right.
And Peter and I, like I say, are amazing amp nerds together and dear friends. So 1,000 ideas. I mean,
Right.
and so it was our chance to sort of chase it.
Yeah. So did you have a technical background then to build the amps, or were you learning as you went, or how did you
Well,
do that?
a little bit. I had some mild electronic training
Mm-hmm.
in high school. And then when I started college, I was on an EE track for one semester, and I realized, that's not what I want to do.
Right.
But I do learn a lot. And then I was on the road playing myself for many years,
Mhm.
and I had to fix my own amps all the time. Peter and I were constantly in his basement in Atlanta fixing amps. We used to work at a music store in Atlanta. So you
Mhm.
just kind of learn over time. You go buy old tube manuals, you talk to smart guys,
Sure.
and, burn your fingers and get electrocuted a lot. And after a while, you kind of learn. What we really intentionally do, though, since we're in Los Angeles, with the resources are kind of amazing,
Mm-hmm.
we know we're sort of cocktail napkin engineers. We surround ourselves with really smart people.
Right.
And there's no real ego at the top in this thing. It's like, somebody can do this better. Let's get them in.
Mm-hmm.
Get smart guys. So we've amassed a crew of people that are just brilliant.
Nice.
And we've been very lucky. They come to us and say, hey, I dig the amps. You guys hiring? And you talk to them and go, oh, my God, this guy's amazing. Yeah, we're hiring. Come on in.
That's great.
So it's not the typical sort of autocrat at the top that
Mhm.
you would see. It's, we got a good crew. And what I don't know how to do, I get someone who's smarter than me to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great approach.
We just want to make good stuff,
Right.
you know.
So what's the philosophy of the amps? Is there a sound you're going after? I mean, Peter took it out with Sheryl Crow.
Yeah.
I assume he had a sound in mind, but the whole line, do you have a philosophy behind that?
Well, each individual amp, there's sort of a mission for it. But at the high level, what we want to try to do is, give amps, of course, that sound great. I mean, everybody's trying to make good sounding amps, but
Sure.
they have to be really, really reliable. And they have to be built to modern standards. And we touched on this in the presentation here, that old amps weren't designed for rooms that are full of smartphones and 15 wireless mics going and the Wi-Fi blasting and LED screens behind the amps.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to build amps to a little different standard to live in that environment and operate correctly. And we wanted to do something that was maybe a little more robust, because all of our favorite vintage amps, and it's kind of everybody's favorite vintage amps, most of those are fantastic amps, but they're just one-trick ponies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an amazing trick.
Sure.
I won't say names, but there's one amp that sounds great on 4, sounds great on 7. Everything else is not really useful.
Right.
And you got to put 2 or 3 amps on stage to throw a net wide enough for the gig. And for Peter, it was a big net because Cheryl's catalog is really large.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to convincingly do American sounds, convincingly do British sounds, convincingly do little tiny amp sounds,
Right.
all these sorts of things. So each one of our amps, there's a typically American voice to it and a typically British voice to it. We don't copy any circuits, so it's not like you're going to get an X here and a Y there. But you hear it and you go, yeah, that's British. Like even like this producer that I'm sitting in front of, it runs on 6L6s, but the British side's really convincing.
Right.
And even on our EL84 and EL34 based amps, the American side's very convincing. And so you can take one reliable amp out and do a gig.
Cover all the sounds.
And I was a player for a long time, so it's just easy. I got a head, I go in, I can cover it. Or if you're a studio guy, and you walk in and you got to do a few things.
Right.
We have a lot of customers in major cities around the world, and they're getting to their session in a cab.
Right.
So having one small head like little Elvis here that they can just throw in their lap and catch a cab to, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want to be schlepping around a double stack.
And we overbuild everything. Like even the cabinets are made out of furniture grade birch wood, from Russia. It's Baltic birch, not the Asian birch. It's the proper, and there's no knots or voids in it, and we use proper joinery, to make it incredibly rugged. There's a story I'll share with you. I know we're limited on time, but I got a call from Keith Urban's Tech one day. These are Nashville guys. And he goes, hey, man, I just want to let you know Keith's rig fell off a forklift 7 times. Oh, crap. Okay, tell me what you need. He goes, no, they're all fine. I'm just messing with you.
Wow.
Those cabinets are built like tanks.
Wow.
And that's why a lot of those old vintage cabinets are still valuable today, because they're survivors.
Sure.
They work. So we kind of build to that standard or better.
Right. Now you mentioned the producer. Tell us about this amp.
Well, the producer's one I'm really proud of. The main purpose of this amp, this is 6L6s, but it's only 28 watts. But this is the first in what we call our high current, low voltage design style. And the main thing is that tubes don't like voltage, they love current. Most traditional amps are very high voltage, low current. You have to compensate. If you drop voltage, current has to go up, vice versa. So we went to Mercury Magnetics in Chatsworth, California, who I consider to be the wizards of transformers. And they designed a power transformer for us that'll deliver enough current. So this is a pair of 6L6s running at pretty low voltage, but it's drawing more current than a 100-watt Marshall does. So what I have are happy tubes. Again, tubes hate voltage, right? So I have happy tubes that are just bathing in rich electricity. So I get this amazing performance out of the tubes. And it's at a volume you can sit in front of. Like right now, we've got the voltage. This is our master voltage feature, and the voltage is, 8. And so
it's comfortable to sit in front of it.
Yeah, it's a pair of, let's just run it wide open for a second. Now, if this were a 50-watt amp and we were sitting right here, you would wince when I did this. And I hope it's coming through the microphone, but you have the authority and the feel of a big, giant amp.
Yeah, right.
But it's really not that loud. But the other surprise of this is, you don't expect good distortion out of 6L6s.
Right.
So since they're bathing in this rich AC, I get this. Now that's a pretty convincing British sound, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can really hear the back end out of it. It sounds like the power tubes are really digging in.
Yeah, so you don't feel neutered. We were all at one point played through big amps, and it's a glorious thing to do. But since I'm having my almost 19th annual 29th birthday this year, I can't take that volume. I can't.
And who has to carry them?
Yeah, no one plays that loud on stage.
Yeah, right.
It just doesn't happen. So
right.
So here we have it.
Right. So you were foot switching between a gain stage, or what were you doing when you stepped on foot switch?
See, this green light over here is our American side, and it has a traditional American just treble and bass tone stack.
Okay.
You've got your very nice. Very American.
Right.
Barry sounds like a good American amp. And you can get your... And on each channel there's a bump, and then we have our bump control. So that's just kind of straight clean. Oops, wrong switch, sorry. And then you can bump it and make it sound sort of like a hot-rodded American amp. Push it a little bit harder, and you've got your very American sounding distortion. A little bit ratty, a little bit loose, you know, and it's got that fun sound. And you go over to channel 2. It's just a volume and tone knob on this. So if you're familiar with most old British amps, the tone stack really didn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
And so this tone knob is really just sort of a treble roll-off. And if you ran, I don't want to say names, but if you ran the big old favorite British amps, you usually set the tone stack in a place where it's not doing anything at all, and that's where it breathes the most. So you've got that. So with the green light, the bump is off, and you've got sort of a late 60s to early 70s. And here we got that mid-range, and you get a little more attack and punch. Then you hit the bump. And again, I mean, we're wide open here, and it doesn't hurt.
No, it's comfortable. And a lot of rich harmonics.
Yeah, and part of that, thank you, a lot of that is we cathode bias the amps, which brings out a lot more of that. But also, again, it's because the tubes are just flooded with electricity. They're happy.
But you're able to then, with the voltage control, you bring that down instead of having a master volume.
Exactly.
And so why don't you turn that back and let's hear what it sounds like when you...
Yeah, so we'll go down. You know, right now I've dropped the voltage on this over 100 volts.
Wow.
And so... So that, you kind of, okay, the distortion still works. That's not a hat trick.
Right.
The thing is, if you had a master volume, you wouldn't lose your clean sound. You did. I've still got a good clean sound. Still sounds like a good old American amp.
Yeah, nice. And the dynamics are still there.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel any different under finger at all. I mean, it will change a hair because the speakers aren't being tickled as much with electricity, but in general, it's the same. So, you know, we call it the stink eye knob because you can turn this down until the singer quits giving you the stink eye.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned speakers. What speakers are you running in the cabinet?
Our standard 212, I like to mix the magnets. I have a Celestion G12H30, and we have a Celestion Alnico Blue in this one.
Okay.
The mixed magnets really tend to complement each other, and that was an accident I ran into because I used to blow up my Marshalls all the time, and I'd taken blue out of a box and stick it in there, and oh, that's kind of cool.
Right.
You know, the magnets have different attack speeds. They also have different frequency response. And so they tend to fill in each other's gaps really nicely. And so you get this kind of airy 3D sound. It makes the amp sound bigger than it really is.
Yeah, right. They're kind of complementing each other.
And I get made fun of for using this word all the time, but it gives you more vocabulary out of the amp.
There you go. And I guess you would, in the studio, have the option then of miking either speaker if you wanted to.
Or mic both,
Mic both.
I like to, I know you guys sell microphones too, so one of the most common setups that I see is a Royer 121 on the G12H30 and then a 57 over on the Alnico Blue.
Sure,
and you
they
get
just blend them.
You get this big airy sound, and you can lean left or right on your mix depending on what part of the song you're in, whether it's a single string part or a fat rhythm part. And even if you want to do it in stereo, it just gives this great big sound.
Yeah,
so
nice.
It's fun.
Yeah. So how about the Little Elvis?
Little Elvis is, I'm so glad this amp is on stage. This amp has a really cool story. I worked with a really good friend of mine, Jim Elliott, who wrote The History of Vox. You see that white book? I think you guys sell it. Fantastic book. Jim had the world's largest collection of Vox amps, and we went through them all at our shop.
Wow.
These are all JMI Voxes, like early hand-wired ones.
Right. And
he brought over a prototype to me once and said, I don't know what this is. Can you check it out? And we opened it up, played it. It sounded fantastic. And I opened it up and said, Jim, I don't think this is a Vox. The transformers are different and the circuit's different. I have no idea what this is. He goes, no, it's a Vox. And I think it was actually Dick Denny's amp. Oh, okay. Well, listen, I love it. Can I take the transformers out and take it over to Mercury and see what's going on here? Yeah, sure. And then I made a copy for myself because I loved it so much. And then he was doing the book release party, and Derek Underdown came over, who was the head engineer at Vox starting in '54. And Derek, lovely, lovely gentleman. He's in his mid-80s now, but still had his faculties and his memory. Just amazing. So Jim said, hey, you lived in England. Derek's over. He's old. Can you take care of him for an afternoon while we're setting up for the party? Oh, absolutely. I have a conversation I want to have with Derek.
Yeah, right.
So Derek came over to our shop. I pulled out this chassis, and I said, do you remember this? He's like, oh, bloody hell. I remember that. That was Dick's amp, and I was always fixing it for him. And I go, well, look, I really love it. And he goes, yeah, we never sold it because it got too much distortion. In '64, that wasn't sought after. It just didn't have enough power. So we had a whole day together. I sat down with Derek. I took 24 pages of notes listening to this guy tell me every deep, dark secret about Vox and production techniques and all these sorts of things.
Wow.
And then I said, do you want to help me finish this? Oh, yeah. And he took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and he worked with us all afternoon. And he goes, no, you want to ground over here, and you want to do this crazy thing. But there's part of this amp that we still don't know exactly what it does. And this is the beautiful part of the story. He goes, did you ever figure out what that one triode does right before the phase inverter? I said, no, we just know if we pull it out, it sounds worse. He goes, yeah, well, I was in the RAF during World War II, and I worked at radar stations along the southern coast of England. And our main thing was to get signal back to London. I figured out ways to do weird tricks with tubes that would heat up the signal, fatten it up so they could read it clear in London. That's what's in that amp.
Wow.
And that's why it gets that big fat distortion. So we should play through it.
Yeah, let's
it's only does 12 watts clean.
Okay.
And it's really fat, powerful little amp. And that's why I loved it, because the distortion was ridiculous. And we put a tremolo and some other stuff on it to flesh it out. But for a little pair of EL84s, it's just wonderful. That does not sound like a Vox at all, but it's just huge.
That's a big sound, yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge sound out of a little pair of EL84s. And if I pull that little mystery triode out of there, it doesn't have that.
Wow.
And I still don't know what it does.
Very interesting.
But so this to me was quite an honor, because this is one of the guys.
Right.
This is one of the guys.
Right.
And he sat down and he came in our shop and he did the big data dump with us, and it's actually got some of his heritage in there.
That's so cool.
I'm really thrilled about it.
So it has the master voltage as well?
Yeah, all of our amps do have the master voltage except for our original London. So it has the master voltage. Right now you're at full voltage.
Right.
We got the volume turned up pretty high on it. We're at 7 or 8.
Sure. So it's got volume, tone, then it has the bump control, and then tremolo on this
And
one.
then it's tremolo. It's a tube-driven tremolo. Let me turn the intensity up here. And I put one little feature on this that I thought was really important. I made the LED time with it.
Nice.
So it's just a raunchy tube tremolo.
Yeah, sounds
It's
great.
not clean. It's not tidy. It's meant to sound like that because I think it's a great effect.
Right. Was there a tremolo in the original amp?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, so you added that in.
Yeah, it was literally just a volume and a tone knob.
Wow.
And that was it.
All right.
It was a prototype. I mean, literally the chassis was nailed into the cabinet. It was
That's
total
so great.
slapdash. It was
That's
really
great.
cool.
Dan, the amps sound great.
Oh, thank you.
It's been so much fun talking to you about it.
Thanks,
Just great
Mitch.
stories and great tones.
Well, thanks for having me here at Sweetwater.
We're excited to have the amps here and have you come in and show them to us.
It's been a real pleasure because we have so many customers that can't get to our high-end boutique shops in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago and everything. And I know there's a giant audience out there that are looking for our stuff, and you guys do such a fantastic job of taking care of your customers.
Thank you.
You give a level of service that meets our standard. We're known for bending over backwards. You can call the shop and talk to me.
Right.
You can talk to our head engineer, and we'll stop what we're doing. And yes, you know what? It's okay. Your cord wasn't plugged in correctly. That's fine. Have a great day.
That's so cool.
And you guys treat people with that level of respect and kindness. And so I'm really excited to be here.
That's a
and I
great
think it's a
partnership.
great fit. So
Yeah.
I hope we can have a lot of fun together.
I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank
Good
you,
to see
sir.
you.
You too,
Thank
man.
you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more guitars, more amps, more effects, and we'll be making lots of music. I'm Mitch Gallagher.